Hello there. Or as our Ewok friends say, Goopa. You're listening to Chosen Ones, and this is Chapter 7 of The Mandalorian. There's a lot to talk about with this episode, so we're here with my buddy Wink, as usual. Wink, are you ready to do this?
Yeah, that is a ridiculous question, of course.
We really need to go over this because it'll be awesome to recap this episode before the finale tomorrow.
Yes.
I mean,
the holidays
can you believe it's almost over?
A little late on getting this one out, unfortunately.
Yeah, that seems to happen with holidays. They get in the way of what's important.
That's true, they do.
But man, I'm kind of sad that it's all going to end tomorrow.
Yeah, it's very sad. We're gonna have to wait like a year. Actually, I'm not sure when chapter 2 or season 2 is returning, but they have announced they're already recording it and all that sort of stuff, so we know it is coming. Just I'm not exactly sure when. I do think they made some sort of announcement on that, but
the real question will be what will come out first, season 2 of Mandalorian or the next Star Wars TV show?
That is a good question because there is there's a whole slew of them coming up, and we're we're not going to be short on Star Wars content. That is for certain.
Speaking speculative here on rumors, but there are rumors out there that there is another Star Wars television show, unnamed and unannounced, that's already almost wrapped up filming. So,
yes,
if that is true, I really want to know A, what it is about, and B, when it's coming out, because that's pretty good news.
Yeah, I actually just read about that. There are rumors on what it is. I cannot remember though. Sadly, I read something about it. It sounded kind of interesting. So I'm sure we'll be getting more information about that here before too long.
Sounds good to me. But until then, we still have a Mandalorian.
That is true. And
let's do this.
We have this episode 7. It was a pretty exciting episode. There was a lot going on, and it was kind of, it's kind of nice to kind of see how this season's kind of wrapped up, because we kind of talked about how we had everything with the child in the beginning and how the season started up. And then it kind of moved into a little bit more, a few episodes that were a little bit more standalone episodes that didn't really tie in a whole lot with the primary storyline that we were fed in the beginning. But this episode certainly comes back to that main storyline heavily. That's basically all it is. Kind of going back to some friends that we met earlier in the season, which was really cool. And
yeah, the throwbacks are perfect here. And it kind of gives you an idea of why these one-off episodes are still important, because not a lot of people really loved the episode in which he met Cara Dune, but that was an important episode because he met Cara Dune.
Exactly. And you got to see her abilities as a fighter and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that was obviously crucial for setting up this episode, because not a whole lot of people Mandalorian could, of course, trust after things with the guild went south. And that kind of takes us to where this episode actually started, was a transmission from Grief Karga coming through about a deal to rid the city of the Empire. He is calling Mando and basically offering him a job, which seems a little fishy.
Well, fishy, and it kind of made me wonder. We never really got to hear the full message that that droid was hearing when he was going on that prison break, basically. We never really saw the full message that Karga was sending. He just knew that, he just had mentioned that from the message he gleaned that the guild was not happy with Mando, that something had happened between the Bounty Hunters Guild and Mandalorian. But I'm kind of curious if that message had been coming for a while, and if that part of what he saw was that message trying to get through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because really, before that, what other message would Karga be trying to send him besides, internet?
I thought
internet
that
tough guy
message was,
I'm gonna find you.
I thought that message was a previous message, from whenever he took the child and ran initially. just about him coming back and stuff, but I'd have to go back and listen to be sure.
Yeah, I can't remember. It seemed like we only got pieces and parts, so maybe it was. It's just interesting to think that could have been part of this message if it wasn't.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's immediately where it opens up, and so now we see that Mandalorian has decided to return to Navarro, which is that first city that we were at, of course, and Grief wants him to come help him kill the client, so he basically makes a deal that he will pay him, and he gets to keep the child as long as they wipe out the Empire, because the Empire have overran the city, and they're creating a lot of trouble for the Guild, which is obviously terrible for business.
An interesting thought to Mando with his thinking with this too, and you kind of get this from interactions later on with some of the people he picks up to go with him. But why would you want to go back there, knowing you're in such bad graces with them, despite what the offer is and who it's from? You would think he would be more hesitant. You know what I mean? But later on, he says he has to go. And it's almost as if, he's done all this side work since he got out of the Guild, and it's not paying. He's not able to live off of it. And he kind of it's almost like he says, despite what happened, he's got to make it right to be able to work again. That's what it felt like, at least.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of that. I mean, because he's a fairly honorable guy. I mean, he doesn't want things to be south with the Guild, obviously, if he could avoid it. But, it was kind of the Call of Duty that led him to save baby Gizmo and turn on that, So he's trying to do things right, and I think that's ultimately, it's kind of that same mentality that led him to going back. But fortunately, he makes a couple of good decisions prior to that. He decides to go back and track down Cara Dune, who's basically gamble fighting, and he offers her the job, and she wants no interest in it until she learns that they're all Imperial, in which she is 100% on board for that.
Right. This was my job before. There's a reason I was doing it, and even though I would not have done it for anything else, I'm doing it because it's Imperials.
Mm-hmm. So him and Cara, they jump back on the Razor Crest and fly back to our good old buddy Agnolotti. The reason they make this decision, this scene was actually quite funny. They're standing there talking, and the ship looks like it's about to crash, and of course that is because little baby Gizmo ended up getting on the controls, and they realize they definitely need a babysitter. This is just not going to work.
I used to play a lot of Flight Simulator when I was a kid, and I wish I could remember the name of it now. And if there are any pilots that listen to this podcast, you'll probably be able to tell me what the word is once you hear this episode. But when you take the wings off to a certain angle, or you dip the front of the plane down too far, you go into like this type of mode where it's really hard to get the plane out of that tail. It's not a tailspin, but it's got a name. But anyways, it's really hard to get out of it. It was interesting to see that once little baby Gizmo was swinging that thing around so much, it took a lot for Mando to get it out of that. Like,
yeah,
he messed up their trajectories pretty badly there. I was just kind of surprised to see that a spaceship would operate the same as a plane.
Yeah, I think the big thing that we learned there is little baby Gizmo, not a pilot. Keep him the hell away from the controls. So they end up going back and finding our good buddy Agnolotti, and there's a lot of really good stuff in this scene. Primarily the part where they're in the hut talking to Agnolotti, and IG-11 comes in, and of course they pull their blasters on him, and IG-11's bringing tea, which is not what we expected from this bounty hunter droid. But we learn that Agnolotti has repaired him and got him completely reprogrammed, and we get to see that little montage, which I thought was really cool. But maybe the most important thing in this scene was some of the stuff about little baby Gizmo. Ignolti is familiar with, like the gene editing and copying and all that sort of stuff, just genetic engineering. And he kind of determines just by looking at baby Gizmo and his, experience with that stuff, is that little baby Gizmo's not actually engineered. He looks like he's actually evolved because he's a little bit too ugly to be engineered, which I thought was really funny. I want to see one of these engineered baby Gizmos, if they're even cuter.
Well, if he calls that one ugly.
Right?
It's definitely interesting to Quill to find out kind of more about what he was doing when he served the Empire, or when he was, enslaved to the Empire. Because whenever you look at an Ugnaught, you think, okay, he worked in a chamber and, put people into, what is that stuff Han went into, that Mando puts people into?
Carbonite?
Why is it? Yes, carbonite. I don't know why that was escaping me. But yeah, I always think of Ugnaughts working in a carbonite chamber. So this Ugnaught was doing something else, and it's interesting that he has background and that kind of stuff. I don't know. But yeah,
yep.
IG-11... repaired and reprogrammed. That did not see that coming. But then we already got Cara Dune back from one of the other episodes. We knew we were coming back to get Quill to watch little baby Yoda,
which we learn is actually his name.
Yes,
he does in fact have a name.
We knew his name from all the freaking closed captioning before, but he's never really told Mando his name. So his name is Quill. I've been pronouncing it wrong this entire time because I was like, Khalil?
Yes, because it's spelled Kuiil. Kind of interesting spelling to get the name Quill, but sure. Yeah.
So he got his name. He came back. Now you've seen 2 or 3 episodes with Quill, and then throwback again all the way to episode 1 where he met IG-11 and actually shot him to save little baby Gizmo. So now you've got this cast of 4 characters all in the same hut from different episodes across the season, so you can see how everything's kind of being drawn together here at the end. You got all these little stories from episode to episode, but it also draws it all together in a totalitarian way, in totality, I guess.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and they did a really good job with this. The other thing that I thought was really cool about IG-11 is, we in Star Wars, we see all these various droids and they all kind of have personality and they have their own little quirks and all that sort of stuff. And that was really cool, getting to see IG-11 being repaired, reprogrammed, stripped down and fixed, and then going back through his learning experience, getting to see him pick up jars, and he's breaking jars and smashing rats on accident. And
that was the best part. When he just threw the box so on the rat.
And
I was like, oh god.
So this was cool. They mentioned that, his experiences with learning and everything is what helps shape his personality. So I thought that was a really, really cool takeaway, kind of to something that we've never really got an answer from in Star Wars in general, is to, how the droids get their personality.
Yeah, so basically he said that when Mando shot him in the head, it completely blew out his not personality harness, but his basically his mental harness. And so he had to reprogram the droid to be something new, and basically that everything that he was before was completely gone, and all that he is now is what Quill makes him into. So basically he's saying that this is not IG-11, but it is IG-11 because he still left the name on him. But obviously Mando, being the guy that's a little bit afraid of I don't know if he's afraid of droids. He hates droids. What happened to him probably makes him fearful of them a little bit. But he does not trust that this droid. Interesting, it's just interesting that what he said. It's in their nature.
Yes.
It's in his nature to be a killer, but it's a droid. It's reprogrammed. It doesn't have a nature. So it's an interesting, other type of
contradiction.
conversation where
Yeah.
it's like, do droids have souls? Do droids have just programming? I thought that was interesting. He's like, it's in this thing's nature to kill.
And
He
I
does
think
not
part
trust
of this is his experience with it. I mean, it was trying to kill Baby Gizmo. There's no doubt about that. And you know, I can totally see why he would not want to trust it. That in combination with the other fears. But there's a lot of good comedic relief with IG-11. You know, a few of the things on the ship, and then the tea situations and all that stuff was really, really well done.
I have prepared second meal. Will you be eating it here or downstairs?
I'm not.
I don't want any.
Yeah, it was very funny. So before they got on the ship, of course, you know, Mando's trying to convince Quill to come, and ultimately he just wants to do it just to end slavery. I mean, he doesn't want a payment. He knows that nobody's free until this sort of stuff ends. So you get a really good look at just the type of, you know, person, or I guess type of Ugnaught that Quill is. And he's a very caring, compassionate person. But ultimately, he has to bring his blurgs, and he has spoken.
Yep. And 3 of them.
Yes, all 3 of them in the Razor Crest. I have no idea where they're at while they're flying. But so the next scene where this was pretty interesting because Quill had been told about what happened with the Mudhorn back in episode 2, with how little baby Gizmo stopped it and all that sort of stuff. And here he gets to actually see that in action, where Mando and Cara Dune are, of course, arm wrestling. And as they're arm wrestling, little baby Gizmo reaches out and begins to force choke Cara. And it appears that, you know, he's basically just trying to help. Mando thinks that Cara's kind of attacking or something.
That's my assumption, is that he thought she was attacking him.
Yes. And
she was trying to protect him.
He was just, protecting his buddy, which is awesome to see that, you know, that they have grown this connection. Not only is he protecting him, but little baby Gizmo is protecting Mando too. I thought that was just a fabulous scene, and getting to see that, you know, this is kind of a natural reaction for him. You know, the force choke, him being this young, and this is something that, you know, he is capable of doing. Very cool.
Before this, also think about it. All the times that you've seen him use the force was to help Mando. The first time stopping the Mudhorn. The second time he wanted to do something. We'll talk about it here in a second. He wanted to do something to help Mando when he was hurt. And then the third time was with this force choke. So you could tell the bond between these two is just continuing to grow as the season goes on. It's not just Mando saving this, you know, little green Gizmo just because it's the right thing to do, but they're also growing a connection between the two of them.
Yes, for sure. And so Quill and Cara aren't exactly getting along too much on the ship. And, you know, she seems to have something against him since he was enslaved by the Empire. And, you know, he doesn't really get defensive. He basically just says, you know, I'll show you how I did that. And that is by doing what Mando asked and creating a little bit better bed for baby Gizmo, which does turn out to be pretty important. So they finally land back on Navarro, and of course they are greeted by our good old buddy Grief Karga and 3 other bounty hunters. And
3 very ugly bounty hunters.
Yeah, 3 very ugly bounty hunters. One of them's really rough looking.
They've been through some things.
Yeah, I would say so. And so they all have their own blurgs, and they all kind of come trotting off. And the one thing that really surprised me is how willing Mando was to let Grief get close. I know he's kind of reaching for his gun. There was a little bit of tension there. But, Grief kind of showed that, he was curious as to what the whole thing was about. And I think, at this moment, they were still in their plan to betray Mando, kill him, and take, little Gizmo. But he kind of starts to see maybe why Mando did what he did. I think that part was really important, that he actually got to see him this early on.
Well, and I think that the reason he did let him get that close to him was to, kind of scope him out and see obviously, if they just tried to pull something right there, right off the ship, he would know that he was in trouble from these 4 guys.
Right.
And so he's like, he reaches for his pistol when he's going close to the baby, but Grief picks him up. He's like kind of just looking at him. He looks like anyone that picks up a baby, to be honest. Just like, oh, he's so cute. And then he sets him down, and Mando's like, all right, sweet. So now they've built a little bit of trust between the two groups just from that. And obviously not enough to mend all the fences, but he's like, all right, well, he didn't try to run off with him, so that's a start.
Yep. So after they get their little introductions out of the way, they start heading off, and they kind of start talking about these Empire characters and how, if they're able to take out the client and kind of the head guy, this could actually be good for Grief. I thought this was kind of interesting because he was kind of talking about employing some of these, ex-stormtroopers and some of these people that are around, and I thought that was kind of interesting that he has that sort of approach.
Yeah. It's like, I don't mind them if their leader's not here, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if he can make a use out of them, he will. So.
Yeah. It's interesting that what he said was, if they'll follow the money, if the money stops, they'll stop us, following the Empire.
Yep.
And you're going to need a place to work. And that work is me here in this sector. So.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Yep. And he would much prefer to be the one handed out paychecks, I'm sure. So, as they're hiking across all these lava fields, a lot of really cool scenes here of like lava and all that sort of stuff. That just the visual spectacle through all this was really well done. Ultimately, they set up camp, and as night approaches,
the setup for this was perfect, by the way. I did not see it coming, and it was pretty funny.
I mean, was this meant to be like a Game of Thrones mashup? Because it was like Daenerys just came in and, wanted to take him out for some reason. It was kind of unexpected. Like, what the hell were these things? Were they dragons? Were they huge, like,
pterodactyls?
Yeah, that's kind of what they look like. But as we learn, they are also poisonous because they, of course, tear Grief's arm open and poison him, which is obviously incredibly important. But, they tried dragging Mando. Everybody got a little bit of, beating up. But ultimately, they're able to kind of fire on them and get them to take off. Unfortunately, they also got some blurg, and
I was about to say, funniest part about that scene is the thing my wife was worried about and upset about was when they started taking the blurgs.
Yeah.
And Quill, you could hear Quill's voice, like
I felt
he
so
was
bad
really,
for Quill.
really upset. He's like, "You put her down!" Like he loves his blurgs, man. And he lost 2 of them in one pterodactyl attack.
Quill is just the superstar of this episode. I mean, he has a nice little life with his droid helper, his blurgs, his peaceful little town, and yet he gives up all of that to come and help Mando on this righteous quest, just to make sure that
slavery like he was in.
Exactly.
Like, he's got his own personal investments in it.
I mean,
you love to see it.
yeah, Quill is just, such a good-hearted character, and then to see him start losing his blurg, just sad, makes you feel for the guy.
It's the voice, man. When he started screaming out when they were taking him,
Yeah,
I was like, oh man, he is not happy with this.
Very sad. And ultimately, after these things take off, Kara starts trying to repair Grief, and of course,
using that field medicine that
Yeah.
she learned as a trooper. Not great. Got to do your best, but she's trying her best. And at some point, she winds up needing another med kit to save him, and they don't have any more med kits. So things are looking grim. I think there's the funniest, not funniest, but the most ironic part, I guess, is when, first off, Kara, not a kid person. This whole episode, she's just kind of been like, should we leave that kid alone? Are you sure that he's
he tried
okay?
to force choke her. What do you expect?
Well, she did that. Well, yeah. I'd
want to leave his ass
I totally
too. Let's
forgot
be
about
honest.
that. Well, that's the funny part, right? So with that having happened earlier, I totally forgot about that. When the little baby Gizmo starts waddling over next to her, and she's just like, "Can you get that thing out of here?"
Yeah.
And then I can't remember. Oh, it's Quill. Quill's like, "No, let him go," and because he saw something happening, and that's when little baby Gizmo starts reaching up his hand, just like he did to Mando when Mando's arm was all cut up, but Mando kind of put him back in his carrier instead of letting him touch him. Not really knowing what was going on, probably, but little baby Yoda reaches down, puts his hand on Grief's arm, and suddenly you can see like the life come back into Grief's eyes, and Grief kind of just looks down at him. Well, before that, he's trying to eat me.
Yeah.
So Grief just yelled out, he's trying to eat me.
Because they were just talking about how he's a meat eater. And
so he's got his arm on him, and you can kind of see like the inevitable death that was, you could see it on his Grief Karga's face kind of just disappear, and he's staring at him as his whole arm just heals completely up. The claw marks, the 3 little scratches all close up, and his arm is perfectly fine now. And then of course baby Yoda, or little green Gizmo, falls back on his butt, used up all his energy, but Force healed him completely fine. It was crazy.
And this was the first time we've seen like a Force heal like that. They talked about, spoiler if you haven't seen Rise of Skywalker, but they talked about, kind of tie in with this episode, and that turns out to be what it was. That, Force healing is an ability that, maybe it's just been lost to Jedi, that this little guy somehow found naturally, maybe just from being on his own. Maybe it has something to do with the experiments that were going on, and he kind of learned how to Force heal. Maybe that's part of what the deal is, because, we can talk about this more next week when we do our Rise of Skywalker thing. But I think there is probably something to this little guy and the Empire wanting him due to his Force healing abilities. Might be kind of important.
That makes the most sense to me too, because they Jedi powers have been seen before.
Yes.
What would make him more special than just having the ability to use the Force? Something like this. Yep. Absolutely. So
one other thing about Quill, just so interesting in this episode, but when they were talking about, now he understands what happened with the Mudhorn, he seems to have a really good understanding of what happened. He's not confused at all. Like, he really seems to understand. So he's probably had some experience with Jedi wherever he was working prior, for the Empire. He's probably ran across Force users of some degree, because the fact that, if he wasn't there, the thing with baby Gizmo that's been happening, where Mando picks him up and puts him back in his cage whenever he tries to do something like this, probably would have just happened again, and Grief would have died. So the
Which
fact
we'll see in the next scene would mean those 3 bounty hunters
yes
would not be holding back anymore.
No, they would absolutely be trying to take out Mando and Cara. So, Quill's experience
I guess
turns out to be
2
really
at this
important.
point because the pterodactyls took one of the bounty hunters.
Yes, that is a good point.
So there are the tides would have been against those bounty hunters, but they probably still would have tried something.
Yes. Oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so after that, they, the morning comes, they keep walking, they finally reach the outskirts of the city. They're kind of standing on a hill overlooking the city. Grief's in front, Mando and Cara are kind of behind him. Quill's standing next to him with baby Gizmo. And you see the bounty hunters kind of take up this position behind Cara and Mando and pull out their blasters. And you're like, oh, here it comes. You knew this was going to happen. But in a total twist of fate, Grief turns around and it instantly looks like he's about to shoot Mando and Cara, but he uses 2 blasters, 2 hands, takes out both the bounty hunters in one shot.
Yes.
And saves them from the, so basically a double cross there.
And this all happened really fast because, Mando and Cara both got their guns. They were drawing their guns on Grief kind of as he was turning around to shoot the other bounty hunters. If he's maybe a little bit slower on that draw or something, they probably kill him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, there's no telling how that would have gone to save him this time. Yep.
Yeah. You only get lucky once. So.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I guess little baby, he believes he's all on board with little baby Gizmo now because after he was healed by little baby Gizmo, he realized why Gizmo was special and basically abandoned his plan to double cross them or to cross them.
Yep.
And decided that, you know what, I need to help you take out the Empire because that kid will never be safe until they're gone.
Yeah. And so, this is such a huge important part of this episode, as far as clearing Mando's name in a way, because, if Grief's willing to take out a couple other bounty hunters who've actually been helping him to save the bounty hunter that's been betrayed him and given him so much hell over this whole situation, he's coming around on board. So that was really cool. I like seeing that.
No doubt. I like it because I like the Grief Karga character, and this kind of ingratiates the two again to continue for him to be in the show and a character that we see often. So
and Cara wants to take him out. Like she doesn't want to hesitate, but I think Mando actually he knows that Grief now understands. Because there was no incentive for him to do that otherwise.
Kill his own men.
Yeah.
He knows what happened when Mando did it.
100%.
So, yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So this was a huge turning of the tide, and this really, it creates another person that Mando can trust. And, of course, Quill, still trustable, and after this, he sends little baby Gizmo with Quill, tells him to get back to the ship and lock themselves inside the ship that no one will be able to get in.
Important thing to mention that we hadn't mentioned yet is that Mando said under no circumstance was IG-11 to leave the ship. So IG-11 is back on the ship still.
Yes.
And now, so he's sending Quill and Baby Yoda. I keep calling him Baby Yoda. Baby Gizmo. Just keep seeing Baby Yoda everywhere. Baby Gizmo, much better. He sends little green Gizmo back to the ship with Quill, where they're going to lock themselves inside in case something happens. He says that they'll never be able to get into it. Nothing on the planet will be able to break into the Razor Crest. Yeah. I don't know if I believe that, but it's an interesting... Yeah. I wish that we would get to the point where we got to see that, because I'm wondering what that even means. How do you not get through it when Jawas can take it apart in, a half a day?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
who knows?
Yeah. So Quill and Little Green Gizmo are headed back to get into the ship with IG-11. I think that's the main thing. To know that IG-11 is back there with them.
Yes, very important. And so once they head to the city, they start to realize that things aren't quite what they were expecting. There are
4
Empire
stormtroopers
everywhere.
There are probably 4 stormtroopers. Before they even get through the gate, there are 2 scout troopers. And you can kind of see in the background a
10 to 20 of them
walking around. Yeah.
I think the 4 he mentioned was actually protecting the ones that protect the client. Because he mentioned that, he always keeps at least like a fire squad available. I'm not sure how large a fire squad is, but that's kind of what he mentions. But when they come up, we see a term again that we have seen before, which is their chain code. And this is basically Grief's identification. And so, the chain code is both, I guess, an identifier and an ID, and also how you track people. So, because that is the one thing we learned in, I believe, chapter 5, whenever they went hunting for, what's her face? I can't remember her name. I
know who you're talking about, though.
Female bounty hunter, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're starting to learn a little bit more about that, and I would like to see a little bit more and maybe get a better understanding about, what the deal is. Because, I assume it's not just the ID, it's, genetics code, I would assume.
Chain, DNA chain. That's what it makes me think of.
Yeah. But, do you have that on your card, or is that like one of those QR readers where it has all your information in there and just kind of verifies you or something? I don't know.
Still don't know, because if I had a card that told everyone where I was, I'd just ditch the card.
Exactly. So
still don't know.
Hopefully we learn a little bit more how all that system works. But the funny thing was this scout trooper that offers $20 for Mando's helmet. And this little exchange between Grief and Cargo was pretty funny, where he mentions, I'm gonna save
that's
it for
going on
wall.
my wall. Mando's like, what?
Yeah, that was pretty funny. So they didn't ask for Kara's chain code.
Yeah.
That I thought was kind of interesting.
And also interesting is that at first, Grief was hesitant to give it to him. That was another thing. It's like, why is he hesitating to give out his chain code to get into the city?
That's a good question.
I never get that question answered, but it was interesting that at first he was kind of hesitant before he actually took it out and gave it to him.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So they, of course, they head off and finally meet the client. And I realize they're a little bit outmanned, and they get a little bit lucky, in which there was a perfect timing in which the client demands to see the baby, after kind of asking. Amanda mentioned, he's tired, can't leave him alone.
I love the answer, because they're like, let me see the baby, and Grief's like, oh, he's sleeping right now.
Yeah.
And then the client, well, then we'll be quiet. And I was like, what's the retort to that?
Yeah, exactly.
So as they're about to open it, ring, ring, ring.
So this transmission I thought was kind of interesting. So this is Moff Gideon calling in, and it seems like he knows the child isn't there, because
how did he know? That's the real question.
Yeah, if he already knew, wouldn't he have already had the scout troopers out looking for it? Because scout troopers don't go hunting until Mando calls over to Quill and they're able to intercept the message. Why they're not using a more secure line, I have no idea.
That was another thing I wondered, because I saw the scout troopers they're had their finger on their ear listening to the message, and then they just start zooming off. I'm like, why would you be using a normal frequency that anyone could just jump onto?
Yeah, I would think that they're locked to a certain frequency. If you just happen to use the one that the Empire's using, that's just stupidity or terrible luck.
Yeah, bad. Yeah, I'd say either really dumb or really dumb luck.
Yep. Well,
So
the next thing that happens is we basically just start getting the bar blown open by all these stormtroopers and death troopers. Really, really cool to see these death troopers again.
dude, there were like 7 of them.
Yeah, there's
and they
a
look
lot
bad.
of them.
They look just as badass
Yeah, they're
in
so
Mando
cool.
as they did in Rogue One.
Yep, probably the coolest looking characters. I mean, they look freaking awesome.
Yeah, and they destroyed the front of that building. Took out the. This is the part that confused me. I guess Moff Gideon was just like, if you're dumb enough to believe that kid's there, we don't need you in the Empire, and killed him and the other stormtroopers.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why the client was so expendable. That was just interesting that they're just like, all right, kill him off. Mando's here. We'll just worry about him.
So the client, we really haven't got much information about at all. I mean, it seems like he was maybe just contracted out by Moff Gideon to try and find the little guy. Probably knew he was on this planet, so this is why he was camped out there and such. May have not actually been part of the Empire, because I don't recall ever seeing him in anything that was really that was like Empire attire.
It's just interesting that if Little Green Gizmo meant that much to Moff Gideon and the Empire, why he would send someone so or like that they just didn't trust enough or didn't care enough about. You know what I mean?
Maybe because they had a relationship to some degree with Grief Karga, or at least knew how to, was familiar with the way the guild and bounty hunters work, something along those lines, perhaps.
Yeah, he might have had an in with the guild. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of odd, but so this is so damn cool. This is there's a lot of first in Star Wars canon that we then end up seeing more about, but this is another one, and that is these new badass TIE fighter designs. So when Moff Gideon comes in, you see a single TIE fighter coming in, which seems odd because generally these TIE fighters, they're usually like locked in bays and there's a way to get out and stuff because they don't actually land all the way on the ground. However, this new TIE fighter kind of has the folding wings of like those Lambda class shuttles that we're familiar with, that the Emperor used extensively, in the original trilogy. And so you have these collapsing wings where it can lay down all the way to the ground, basically has landing gear under it, and the person's able to get in or out. I assume this isn't a standard TIE fighter because there's probably some sort of weakness to the wings. And how many people actually need to get out a TIE fighter? Like,
I don't think you can consider this a spoiler, but if it is, mute your phone for like 10 seconds. But it's funny that this happened in this episode where he's got this badass TIE fighter and the way it lands. And then in Rise of Skywalker, we see a TIE fighter just land on its wings like normal. So this has to be a special one because Kylo flying a shuttle lands it right on the wings. And I'm like,
well, the one that Kylo flies, it has the folding wings as well.
So he didn't land them on the floating wings or folding wings.
He did whenever he landed at the temple when Rey was already there.
I don't know. We'd have to look at it again because that was one thing I definitely took away is that it didn't fold.
We'll pay attention to that on our second viewing and discuss
second
that.
viewing. I'll have to check that out again. But
so we got this really cool TIE fighter design, and being a Moff is pretty highly ranked. So if somebody's going to have it, it's going to be somebody important like a Moff or someone like that. Why he's not in like a shuttle or something, I don't know. But this kind of hints towards Moff Gideon's probably kind of a badass. I mean, good pilot. You see some hints of him being fairly experienced. If he's taking a TIE fighter out, he can probably hold his own flying. And this kind of might be a little bit foreshadowing for episode 8, where, we may get to see some sort of aerial battle between Moff Gideon and the Razor Crest. That would be really cool.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Small little information about Moffs, because I looked it up while you were talking about it, because I was kind of curious where Moff ranked, and interesting as far as numbers go. In the 5th year of Palpatine's reign, there was a fixed number of 20 Moffs. So there were only 20 of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of 20, and they're sector governors. So he was in charge of the entire sector that these planets were in.
Okay. Very cool.
So 20 of them in all of the Empire, and he is one of them.
Very, very nice. Yeah, so he definitely has some pull in the Empire. And he really wants little baby Gizmo. He basically tells them that they have something he wants, and that they don't have any idea what it is or what they're dealing with. This is kind of interesting, because you would think after they've had it this long, they would probably have some sort of an idea that there's something interesting or unique. There would be some sort of force usage or something.
Mm-hmm.
But he seems to be hinting that maybe there's something more to this kid. And, maybe we'll learn that, of course, in Chapter 8 that we'll be seeing shortly. But,
yeah, he really makes it out like they don't know something. So it'll be interesting to see what out of a whole season what we didn't learn about him. Maybe we'll find out exactly what he means in the last episode. But
yep.
Yeah, he's got the full force behind him. He's standing out there with his 7 death troopers and about what seems like 40 stormtroopers behind them.
Well, yeah, because there's like another ship of stormtroopers that comes in, and there's like bukus of them, basically like a SWAT van of stormtroopers that shows up.
Yeah, that's the SWAT van rolls up. They all jump out, and now you've got ranks of stormtroopers, 7 death troopers, and Moff Gideon there, with them pinned inside of this cantina.
Yep.
So it's not looking good for them. That's pretty much the last you see of them in this episode. Basically, the last you see of them is Mando, though. Those speeders are chasing after Quill, and Mando, he's trying to get a hold of Quill, trying to find out if he's okay, if he made it to the Razor Crest or not. So he knows that little green Gizmo's safe while these guys have them pinned down, but he's calling for him, and you never gets a reply back. Obviously, because Quill is holding little green Gizmo and trying to ride this blurg as fast as he can.
Yeah.
These speeders are closing in. They're getting real close. I think we get to the point where Quill's probably 200 yards away from the ship.
Man, I don't think he's that far away. He is so close. That last scene where you see the speeders are in the distance, and he is damn near to the ramp.
You know what? That's very true, and I want to talk a little speculation when we finish the episode here in a second, because I have a theory about how this next episode is going to start.
Okay.
But yeah, so basically, this is another part where my wife was very upset, and I was upset. Basically, you see a speeder kind of spin around, and you see the speeders coming at Quill. It kind of goes off screen. You don't see what's happening, but you hear blaster fire, right? And then it kind of moves back to what's going on, and little green Gizmo is laying on the ground, and a speeder kind of drives by, and the speeder driver scoops him up off the ground. So you're like, okay, so why is little green Gizmo on the ground? Well, that's when it kind of moves into the cliffhanger of the episode, and a very sad one, in my opinion, because the blurg is down, and so is Quill. And Quill is just laying there lifeless, and that's where the scene ends for the episode, with the to be continued.
And it's so sad just because, this poor guy that basically didn't really have a dog in the fight, just all volunteer, just trying to do the right thing, and ends up costing him his life trying to save the little guy.
Lived his whole life to be free, and then spent his time before he dies trying to get other people to be free.
So what is your theory about how this next chapter is going to start?
So I wanted to make sure that we all knew that IG-11 was in the Razor Crest.
Yep.
So Quill said that IG-11 was programmed to protect. Now,
yes.
The blurg is down. There's a little bit of smoke back behind Quill where the blurg was. I am not saying that he's alive. I'm just saying that maybe it hit the blurg and Quill is alive. I don't know for sure if he's dead or alive. But I do know one thing for sure, and I think that IG-11 is going to come out of the Razor Crest and take out the scout troopers and get Little Green Gizmo. I don't think Little Green Gizmo is going back to the Empire right now.
I think he is. But I think IG-11 is about to
go off. I mean,
yes.
even that's plausible too, because I'm pretty sure if Quill's dead or if he's not, IG-11 is, he's
not
programmed to protect
happy.
now.
Yep.
So he didn't get a chance to protect him from that. He's probably going to do his best after the fact to go after him. So,
and this is pretty important to know, the fact that he will have been able to see the stormtroopers. So he kind of has an identity of, who the bad guy is, and the fact that he has sort of now formed some sort of relationship with Mando and Cara, and we may get to see all of this built up tension and hatred for droids that Mando has maybe get loosened a little bit by IG-11,
we might actually have
coming to his aid.
We might end the season with a team of people. I don't know if Grief would be in the team, but I feel like Mando, IG-11, and Cara are a pretty big team. And if the season ended with them bonding together to pull out saving Green Gizmo and fighting off the Empire, that would be a pretty good way to move into a second season with a group of 3 characters that you care about. I mean, IG-11, we only saw him in the first episode. We saw him at the end or in the middle of, chapter 7. But if he goes off in chapter 8, that's going to be enough to make me want to see even more of him. I wanted more of him after the first episode. So
yes, very entertaining.
Cara, IG-11, and Mando together would be just awesome.
Yeah, and hopefully he still has the same personality quirks. We will see, but he is definitely going to be wanting to avenge.
Yep, no doubt.
Ultimately, where does this leave you on this episode? What did you think?
I think this might be one of the best episodes. I'll give it a 9. I love this episode, and I don't even know how it concludes. But just the fact they brought everything from all the previous episodes together to see where the story was going, and they're focusing not on not one story to be told in chapter 7 and chapter 8, but a full 2 episode story to end the season and the main story. Yep. I thought it was awesome the way they did it, bringing 100%. Everyone back together, introducing the new main bad guy, and just making him look super menacing with the way he's got them trapped. I think it'd be awesome.
Yep. And we know Moff Gideon is a little heartless, so he's gonna make a pretty good villain, hopefully. I'm with you. I'm somewhere close there. I was thinking like maybe an 8.8, just not quite a 9. There were some kind of lull moments in there a little bit, but all in all, the comedic relief, the stuff with IG-11 was fabulous. Getting to see new abilities from Little Green Gizmo, and ultimately just getting back to that main storyline that we care so much about. Man, I'm not gonna lie, when I watched this episode the first time and it ended, I threw my hands up like, are you kidding me? That's it? That's where you're leaving us?
That's where it goes?
Yeah.
Come on.
It did not seem like a 40-something minute episode. I mean, it played like it was pretty quick. Just it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Can I throw out one last speculation?
Sure.
I think we're going to see Fennec Shand in the last episode too.
Yes, I don't think there's any doubt we will see her, and
because I'm pretty sure Moff Gideon was the one that found her on Tatooine.
That's what I was about to say. She very well may be. And, of course, she is familiar with Mando.
And the Empire. Wasn't she hired as an assassin for the Empire after the collapse? So
she would tie in very nicely. They've done a pretty good job at kind of tying something in from all these episodes that we've learned. So, yeah, hopefully we find out very soon.
No doubt.
Well, that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. We would love it if you guys would go leave us some reviews on iTunes or whatever podcast app you guys love. We will be back recording episode 8. It will be out very soon after that episode airs, and then you can expect our review of Rise of Skywalker about a week after that. We want to go see it again, but we will, of course, be doing a review of that.
Yep, sounds good. Well, man, appreciate it. It's been fun. I can't wait for tomorrow. We'll be talking about it tomorrow.
Hell yeah.
So until then,
we have spoken.